Welcome to Catch Outdoors. I'm your host, Captain Rob Mose. This podcast is about living and playing in the great outdoors, especially down in the most southern region of the continental U.S., the Florida Keys. Catch Outdoors is hosted by Spotify and also brought to you by your favorite podcast network. So kick back and get a taste of my Florida. This week's episode of Catch Outdoors is number 106, Bridge Fishing in the Keys. Yes, that is the correct number for this week's episode, 106. Seems I had a total brain fart on not one, but two of the most recent podcasts by saying it was 103 instead of 104 and 104 instead of 105. Not at the beginning, but midway through the podcast. Hey, give me a break. I'm old. But anyway, thanks for everybody pointing it out. Good friend Cindy found it first, but then I heard from several other people. So nice catch, y'all. I'll be more careful. I promise. Let's see here. But first, this weekly fishing report and some random mussings about things in general. First, let me start with the little tidbits off of my trusty notepad. This prevents me from doing a random thoughts thing, so I kind of get those in here earlier now. I think. And you never know. I could do an entire one on random thoughts. It's kind of fun to do that. So anyway, ordered a new monitor for my laptop so that I have a bigger display while writing. That way you can, not only that, Jonelle showed me where you can slide something from one to the other. So you can basically put things on the second monitor. I kind of knew about this, but I've never done it before. Pretty cool. In the box, there were 4 different cables to hook up the monitor to whatever it is you're trying to connect to. I used one and then tossed the other 3 in the so-called wire box. That's in the garage. There are actually 3 wire boxes now. Men are grinning at this point. Speaking mostly to the men in the audience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Perhaps when I'm dead and gone, someone can donate those boxes full of wire, connecting cords, cables that date back to the beginning of time to the Smithsonian. I actually know now that there's a parallel printer cable in one of those boxes. Yeah, remember those? From a recent post on social media about dining in Key West, a responder complained about prices of both food and lodging. Yes, the prices are way up. They're way up everywhere. I don't care where you go. It's all relative, of course. My visits to Publix at this point in time are somewhat shocking. How little there is in the basket and how much the number is on the register. So that's just the way it is. If you're going to go to Key West, expect to pay the price. It ain't cheap. You can eat cheap. You can bring food. You can get lodging that has a kitchen and cook. So you can avoid the dining cost and maybe bring your own drinks. But that's kind of, I don't know. Does that defeat the purpose of Key West? I'm not real sure. But anyway, to complain about lodging and the cost of food there, I don't know. It's high everywhere, so just wanted to run that by you. Let's see what else is going on. Oh, Cortland braided fishing lines. I've been getting a lot of ads. I'm a Cortland user. I've been using their lines for years. They have fly lines, leaders, braided line, and standard fishing line. Well, they used to. I don't know if they still do special fishing line or not. I know that they do braid because I use it. It's great. I'll recommend it. Hands down. I'm not sponsored by them, but it's by far and away one of the best lines I've ever used, especially over the years. I've often said this at seminars and things when we start talking about lines, leaders, knots, and things like that. And I'll say, I'll kind of point out that Cortland invented the modern day fly line. So if you can do that, you can certainly do a good job on the other things that are out there, your leaders and your braided lines. So their braided line's really great. It's soft, off the reel. It does not have that hard, non-pliable feel about it. And it's much, much easier to tie a knot in. And it holds its color. For as long as I've used it, it's held its color. So there you go. And for the time being, it's good to be a Miami Dolphins fan. I've been one from the beginning, and it's been a long dry spell. Nice to see him winning for a change. Hope to goodness this leads to the playoffs. This is being recorded as usual on Sunday. The game today is at 1, and this is about 12 in the afternoon. I don't usually watch. I have this weird superstition about watching Miami play that I ruin everything. So today is the Buffalo Bills. Everybody keep your fingers crossed. You'll hear this on Tuesday after it's all over. But I'm just sitting here going, man, it'd be really nice if we could win a game today. That would be super, super special. And now for a fishing report. I was going to delay today even later because I thought I was going to go fishing this morning with my good friend Gary and Cindy. They're in town from Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville, as they're supposed to say it. But it has been a stormy week. It cleared yesterday, and today our planned trip was a washout. It's just been awful. We have the weirdest weather going on right now. We've got these fronts that are coming down from up north, and they stop, which is normal this time of year. But then they back up a little bit. When they back up, it brings moisture in off the Atlantic Ocean, and we get very, very wet. I saw a news report, I think it was yesterday, we were at over 90 inches of total rain this year already. We normally have about 68 inches, I think it said, 65 to 68 inches. Overnight, just slightly at 91, I think is what it was. We have only hit 100 inches of rain in the recorded time they've been recording it one time. So we might actually break a wet record. Wonderful. I haven't been fishing in over 2 weeks. I'm starting to get to fish in DTs, and I can't wait to get out there. So we have missed the Sunday window, but I'm hoping I'm going to pull this off on Tuesday. So we'll see what happens. Now, for those people that have gotten out there, which is generally the charter guys who will do anything they can, obviously, especially this time of year. This is slow season, so you get a charter this time, you're going to do your damnedest to make it. There's been complaints about the rain. There's been complaints about thunder and lightning and having to quit and go home, that kind of stuff. But some folks did get some fishing in. The consensus is the water has really cooled off thanks to the rain. So the fish have been biting extremely well. There's lots of bait schools appearing in the near Atlantic waters over the patch reefs. There's lots of little mullet around. The mullet run, of course, has started on the East Coast. Let's see what else. Oh, lots of bait in the back. Basically, there's just this overall feeling that things are much, much better. That's why I'm so anxious to get out there. Let's see. The reports that I did see, there are mahi, of course. Boy, we're really catching mahi down right now. Again, between 200 and 300 feet of water has been the hot spot. And people have been trolling over the drop-off on the patch reef, too, and doing pretty well. But those are mostly peanuts. Those are mostly the smaller ones. But the bigger size ones are out in the deeper water. Let's see. Lipped Yozuris, Rapalas, Mirror Lures were the ticket. Bright speeds, 5 mile an hour speed, bright colors is what I wrote down in my notes here. I've also been working really well. But all in all, it's been a really, really good season for that kind of stuff. Yellowtail are almost always a go-to. And I think I've been saying that since I started doing fishing reports on here. Lots of biters in 30 feet of water. However, they're small. Deeper is off the edge. So if you just get off the patch reef and get onto the drop-offs of 50 down to about 100 feet, you're going to find the larger. And there's quite a few out there where people they've been doing like grouper and mutton snapper too in 100 plus. So maybe 200 feet with deep drops. Really good size yellowtail are still out there. That's not terribly unusual down here. So, but it continues, and I like to tell folks about it. So, mentioned last week the sea trout have returned to the backcountry on the grass flats. That's what I was hoping to do today. It's been really good. I mean, what few reports I saw, and there weren't many, most of them were out of Islamorada. The guides going north out of Islamorada mentioned the fact that the snook bite was real good up on the bushes. Redfish have returned on the outside edge by Cape Sable up to Flamingo, but the trout are back on the flats, and that was something you just did not hear any reports of when the heat was going on. So it looks like things are starting to turn around in that regard. We're still doing storms. There's 2 out there right now. Philippe, and I forget what the other one's called. Starts with an R. Whatever. It's going north. It's a fish storm. Both of them are. They both decided to turn north. Thank you, Lord. So that's 2 more that we've gotten out of the way. And right now there's nothing popping off of Africa for anybody to talk about. We are in October now, and this is when things really start to wind down. I'm not saying we don't get October storms. We do. And it's not unusual to get hurricanes in October in the Atlantic, but it is unusual to see one pop up anywhere else. So everybody's keeping their fingers crossed and hopefully escape the worst of it this year compared to the mess last year. On October the 14th, I'll be an instructor at Ladies Let's Go Fishing. That's what, 2 weeks? Yeah, 2 weeks from now. Held at the Elks Lodge in Tavernier. I've done these events in Naples and Fort Myers, and as I've said before, they're really a lot of fun. Ladies, if you want to outfish your hubbies or your boyfriends or your significant others, do it. Just take it. You'll love it. The itinerary is out online now, so you can go to ladiesletsgofishing.com and get a whole idea of, sign up, what the costs are, what they're going to do. They have charters available on Sunday, and I'll be there teaching on Saturday. So I'll be doing talks for about inshore fishing. And last but not least, I have these books for sale. I have a few here at the house. What I Know About Fishing Southwest Florida, Bridge to Paradise, and Take a Kid Fishing. All of them authored by Little Old Me. They are on Amazon Books, and they're also available on Kindle. But you can also order them directly off of the website, catchyoutdoors.com. Those copies will be signed by me and shipped directly to you. So you can get them if you go there and you want to get a signed one. I call them the real McCoy. It's amazing. Amazon prints their own book. So they print the book and send it to you. That is not something that comes from the publisher. The printing is not as fancy. The pages are not as fancy. But, hey, I call it mailbox money. It's nice to get a little check when you sell something online. I thought I'd do the bridge fishing thing today because I get asked about it quite a bit. It will also be in the new book. The Coming Soon Fishing the Florida Keys book. So episode 106 is about, hey, see that, hear that? 106. I just want to let you know I got it right. Bridge fishing is called Bridge Fishing in the Keys. This podcast subject is taken from my experience and from notes that I've taken for an upcoming chapter in the book. So there'll be a whole chapter in the book on fishing the bridges of the Keys, and there are a lot of them. And many of them are fishable. It's like, I remember going in bridge fishing here in the Keys back in the late 70s and early 80s. And at that time, there weren't a lot of rules. Basically, you just went to a bridge and fished if you were not afraid of the traffic. And then the rules came into place, of course, so somebody didn't get hit on the bridge, because the bridges back then were kind of skinny before they started really revamping and putting up fancy bridge rails and things like that. Nowadays, you can't really fish off of them. And you don't fish off of the shore here either much, because there's not a lot of shore to fish off of. A lot of it is condos and private, and it's just not like it was. Let's just put it that way. It's certainly not like it was 35, 40 years ago. So what's happened now is the bridge has become a pretty big deal. And here in the Florida Keys, we have dozens and dozens we have 40-something bridges, if I remember right, 42, 44 bridges that lead out to Key West from up here in Key Largo. And these bridges all have fish underneath them, obviously. Some of them you can fish off of, and some of them you can't. But what they've done that's really special when you get south of Islamorada is the bridges have, I'll call it a co-bridge next door. And what that is the old highway. When they decided a bridge needed to be replaced, they left the old bridge in place and fixed it, basically cleaned it up. They might have put, new concrete top on it, or new concrete type pavement on it, rails fixed up, but it dead ends. It doesn't go all the way across the water from one side to the other. Actually, there's a couple out there that go out to the middle and are broken in the middle. So you really can't get from one side to the other on the old, quote, old bridge. But they're fishing spots now, and they are fantastic. There's whole areas that they've done like this as you head south. So that really appeases people a great deal, because we really don't have a lot of shore type fishing. There are quite a few good beaches. There's things that you can go to. Don't doubt me on that. That'll be in the book too. But basically, the beach fishing is something that everyone can enjoy. So if you come down here and you don't have a boat, you can't afford a charter. Charters are expensive, but you do know how to fish, you can always go to one of the bridges and simply drop a bait over. So what I'm going to do here is try to give you a little bit of detail on what you might need and what you should take with you to fish the bridges. I usually get this question: can you fish under the bridge? Can you fish under an existing bridge that says no fishing on the bridge? Yes, in most cases, if you can find parking. If you can find a place to put the car or the truck, let you get out safely and be able to navigate your way foot-wise underneath the bridge, which can be tricky because a lot of the bridges have a lot of riprap. They have the stone rock underneath them to protect them from waves and erosion. So they can be tricky to climb down. But yes, you can fish under the bridge, and it's really good. Let's just put it that way. Let's see. Let me start with fishing regulations. They all still apply for all of the seasons, bag limits, and size limits. And you need a license. You got to have a fishing license. That's for almost everyone as of right now. Let's see. Yeah, it's best to check. I wrote in my notes here, it's best to check. But here's a rundown of the as I know it, the requirements for a fishing license. If you're a resident of Florida, you need to purchase a saltwater fishing license unless you're under the age of 16 or age 65 or older. Now, bridges, there's a little bit of an exception here. If you are a resident and you're fishing from something that is attached to land, bridge, dock, or whatever, you do not need a fishing license. Ta-da! Now, if you're not a resident, you do. Okay? So if you're under the age of 16, in any case, you don't. So basically, we love it when kids fish. If you turn 16 and you're old enough to get a driver's license, you're old enough to get a fishing license. So back up again. The bridges are attached to land. So if you are a Florida resident of any age, you do not need a fishing license to fish on the bridge. However, you do need to go you need to get a I call them the pretend license. You have like your regular fishing license, and then you get this little addendum thing on there which shows that you're a resident. And don't forget, you got to have your driver's license to also prove that you live here. But that gives those of us that live here, you can go to the bridge and not have to pay to fish. You don't have to have a fishing license for it, and you don't have to pay to fish there other than going and getting your shrimp and putting your stuff together to get out on the bridge. If you are visiting from out of state, you need to purchase a non-resident fishing license. This is for anything, whether you're on shore, these bridges that we're talking about, boats, it doesn't matter. You have to have a fishing license. I believe they do 3-day, 1 week. I'm not sure if they do a month anymore. I know you can just get an annual. It might be 3-day, 1 week annual, but I'm not real sure about that. But you have to have a fishing license if you're from out of state. Again, if you have out of state children with you, they do not if they are 15 years or younger. So that's a pretty good gig. Let's see here. Oh, some piers have their own licenses. You'll find those in the other areas. I'm not speaking of the bridges themselves, but the piers that are located all along Florida's coast. A great many piers furnish a fishing license, so you don't need a fishing license to fish on those either. It comes with the cost of going out on the pier. There are also exemptions from needing a license for persons with disabilities. You can find those on the Florida Fish and Wildlife website. That would be fwc.org. Okay, so that's the legal stuff. Also, keep in mind that I mentioned a minute ago that the bag limits and stuff are all the same. So you need to know, like, how many can you have of a certain fish? How big do they need to be? And are they in season or not? I've got an app on my phone I like. I just got it, so I'm not going to speak about it until I've played with it more. But you will find that there are lots and lots of apps available for fishing. And the ones you're really looking for are what I call real time, so that when you turn it on, it automatically hits a phone, your cell phone, and then pulls down the immediate data. If that doesn't happen, you need to do it before you leave the house. So if you're going out on a boat, 25 miles out, there's a good chance you're not going to get a cell connection. But they update, and that way you have all the rules and regulations for the area that you're fishing, which is pretty cool. There are 3 elements of bridge fishing in the Florida Keys. There's pilings, there's bottom structure, and there's tides. You can add wind to that if you want, but I don't know. It kind of goes hand in hand with tides, so we're going to not worry too much about the wind. Fish absolutely love pilings, plain and simple. They offer safety, they offer food, they can wiggle around to the other side to get away from a predator. It's structure. It's serious structure. And that's what's found under bridges. And not only that, underneath the bridges is an abundance of riprap and junk. Good junk, but junk. When they remodel bridges and when they start playing with bridges and they start knocking like the railings down to put new railings up, the railing goes in the water. If it's considered safe to go, it goes. And usually if it's concrete, that's what happens. They'll just knock it down and down it goes. So what you wind up with is a bridge with not only pilings, but all kinds of structure on the bottom. And fish like nothing better than structure because guess what else likes it? Bait. That's right. Little shrimp, little lobsters, little crabs, and all kinds of small bait fish. That's where they hang out. So that's why there's so much fish underneath there. There's also a certain amount of debris just from storms. And like I mentioned, repairs they'll put stuff down on the bottom, but you would not believe what gets washed in during storms. It can be everything from loose coral, parts to boats, pieces of all people's homes. I don't want to say that, but it's true. You never know. I was snorkeling around one time and saw an entire refrigerator door. I don't know how it came off the refrigerator, but it was a door, an old style door with the old pull handle on the front, like a good old fashioned Frigidaire. But you'll see all kinds of stuff under there. So that is the allure for fish. That's really why they're there. You'll also find live rock, coral, and sometimes sponges under there, which again is just the perfect place for fish. So, I mean, you really can't go wrong. So structure, it's all about structure. Tides are important because all saltwater fish are dependent on moving water. If it's moving, they're there. If it's not, they generally aren't. Saltwater fish are, I've said this before in talks as well as in my books, they're lazy. Our fish are game fish, and they pretty much sit and wait for something to be washed in front of them, especially under a bridge. There's nothing better in their book than to hide behind a piling and sit there all quiet-like and wait for a school of fish to come by, unsuspecting fish, and the game fish attacks them. So that's really what tide does. Tide moves the bait around and pushes the bait, and it pushes it in certain directions, obviously, versus inbound, outbound. The only thing I can really tip you on is when the tide is moving in or out, that becomes the weird thing or a more difficult thing about fishing a bridge. If you're fishing on the side where the water is moving away from you, then you're going to need heavier weight to get down to where the bottom of the pilings are or to get close to the bridge where the debris is. If you fish too light a weight as the water is pushing your bait away from you, I remember now, I'm not talking about inbound or outbound. It depends on which side you're on. The bait will not get to the bottom. The tides are strong under these bridges. We have a tremendous amount of water that moves from the Atlantic inside to the bays and to the Gulf of Mexico and vice versa. So you're going to get quite a bit of push. You may find yourself needing 3, 4, 5 ounce weights just to get to the bottom if you fish during the strongest currents around the full moon and around the new moon. So plan accordingly. The tackle type thing, people ask me about tackle, and I'll get into that again in a minute here, but, hooks and weights, that's the two biggest thing, and then something to bait them with to entice them to eat. The big advantage of fishing bridges is they're typically located over passes where the water kind of speeds up considerably because of being squeezed between two land masses. This can be a real bonus on those non-full moon and new moon tides. When the water's just not moving very much in a bay, or you hear the guys out there, the fish are complaining, oh, now we got a quarter moon, this is going to suck, this is just going to be a terrible day. Guess what? It's going to be a decent day at a bridge because all that water gets pushed into a small column of water that runs under the bridge. That's where you're going to find your bait, and that's where you're going to find your fish. They're going to be hanging out there on those slow tide days. Wind? Yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand with tides. It certainly does when you're fishing out in open water, trying to get yourself positioned so that the tide and the wind are coming from the same direction. That can be tough at a bridge. Sometimes it's blowing in your face and the water's going out. It's just like, oh no, the wind's coming dead south. I'm facing south off the bridge and the water's coming in at me. Yeah. You still play that game of weight and trying to get a balance so that you can get down to the bottom. The wind does not affect bridge fishing like it does open water. I'm just going to make a blunt statement. While it does cause different turmoil underwater because of direction against tide, sometimes you get that backwash kind of crap, but reality is it's nowhere near as bad as it is fishing in open water or out on the mangroves or on the flats. So I'd have to say that if it's breezy, that's a really good day to go bridge fishing. I mean, typically you're going to get away with catching fish when other people are going to struggle if they're trying to do it in a boat. Most of the bridges face from northeast to southwest. I know it's kind of hard for some folks to understand. The Florida Keys doesn't necessarily mean that when you get to the Keys, you don't drive south. You pretty much drive south-southwest. Key West got its name for a reason. It's Key West. West of all the other keys. I know it's a tough concept. So your bridges are generally facing east-west. So they're they're just east-west most of the time. So your north-south winds are going to be the worst. If you get an easterly wind, it doesn't affect the bridge that much. You're going to get a wash around, where water gets pushed from the bay or from the Gulf/Atlantic. But all in all, if you have an east or a westerly wind, it's not going to matter that much. And our winds are predominantly out of the east. So bridges can be pretty cool in that regard. Now, baits. Geez, the choices are endless. I guess the biggest thing is going to be live versus frozen. If you can get live bait, great. And that, in that case, it's primarily live shrimp. That's pretty much what you're going to get to do the bridge. You know, this is kind of weird because up in the west coast of Florida, when I fished anywhere, Pine Island, Sanibel South, all the way down to the 10,000 Islands, live shrimp was the preferred method. And I recommended it to people in both classes, radio, books. But down here, frozen works really, really well, provided you get quality frozen bait. Now, I know that's kind of a weird thing, but a lot of frozen shrimp that you get in a package, when you put it on the hook, it just falls apart. It just loosey-goosey, it's gone as soon as the water warms up around it. There are other frozen shrimp things that you can get that are good. Search the shops out. You can look in the package and tell right away. If the shrimp is real gray, that's probably been in there a while, and it's probably old. If it's lighter in color, whitish to pink in color, light color, there's a good chance that it's fresh frozen shrimp, and it's going to last a whole lot longer on a hook. So be picky. Do the best you can to find that. Something that works great underneath bridges is squid, and squid does not fall off the hook. If you take care of it properly, you can drop the bait several times and miss several times on fish and still have squid on the hook. If you're going to use frozen shrimp, try to refrain from casting. Plain and simple. When it hits water, especially if you've added weight to it, there's a good chance you're going to smack it right off the hook, or almost all, maybe just a small piece is left. I would recommend straight drops. If you're going to put shrimp on there, especially frozen shrimp, cover the hook up with it and then drop it straight down until you touch bottom, and then reel it up a little bit and then just leave it alone. The less you mess with it, the less you pull it in and out of the water, the better off you're going to be. I mentioned squid. Squid's great stuff. Okay, it's kind of like this. You got the body of the squid, you got the head of the squid with the little legs. You pull the head off. Inside, you're going to find a piece of cartilage that runs down the middle of the sock, the back part. Pull that out. Now you've got a windsock. Cut the windsock crossways. So basically, you're making squid rings. That's where they come from, by the way. Calamari, that's what it is. So you start cutting up. And I like to do a little better than, I don't know, I'd get 5/8 of an inch, not quite. Yeah, maybe 1/2 inch thick cuts. Then once you get the circles cut, get the rings cut, then cut it open. Cut the ring open so you have a long little piece of squid. And it's going to be anywhere from, depending on the sock size, 3 to 5 inches long. Thread that onto the hook. You now have a very wavy piece of bait. I mean, literally, it waves in the breeze because of the way you've done it. Don't run the hook all the way down to squid, just the first 2, 3, 4 turns at the top, and then leave the rest dangling. It's very enticing to fish. It smells good. It looks good. It has a lightish white color, so it resembles a fish look in the water, and they love it. They absolutely love it. It also is tough as nails. The nicest thing about squid is it doesn't pop off the hook. Well, it will with continuous bites, but under most cases, if you're messing with snapper, especially like mangrove and stuff like that, it stays on pretty good. The good thing about squid is it's cheaper too. It's way cheaper than shrimp. You can get a nice couple boxes of squid for frozen squid at the price it's going to cost you for one thing of shrimp. So keep that in mind. If you're fishing with kids, squid is a real winner. Kids miss a lot of bites. That's just inherent. They're little, they're still learning, so it's that bump, 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 and the bait's gone if it's shrimp. With squid, they've still got a chance of getting the fish no matter how many times the daggone thing whacks on the hook, so keep that in mind as well. Can you use chum? Yes, maybe. There are regulations about that, and it depends on where you are. It works extremely well off the bridge. But most fishing piers, for example, they won't let you use it in any way, shape, or form. But I haven't been able to find any restrictions for bridges for a chum block. If anybody knows, email me. Let me know. I'd love to find out, because most of the places I looked, especially under regulations, there's nothing in there that says that you can't chum. You cannot cut up fish and throw it in the water. Okay, that's different. That is kind of chumming, but it's different. I'm talking about the chum block that dissolves slowly with little tiny pieces of fish in it. They're worried about sharks. They don't want 1,000 sharks underneath a bridge. So if you start throwing cut up bloody fish in there, you're going to get sharks, and you're not going to get anything else, by the way. You are not allowed to do that in almost all places when it comes to bridge fishing in Florida. But, I double checked and I searched and I tried to find as much as I could about it. But nobody was really, really consistently right or wrong in that department. But everybody was consistent in saying that there's nothing wrong with putting a chum bag down with chum in it. That will certainly help on a slower current day. I don't think I'd want to put one in on a high current, because all your chum's going to do is go well away from the bridge where the fish are biting, and they're never going to come to you. They're just going to be too far away. So you have to pick the right tide to make that work. And like I said, the last thing you want to do is chum it up and get a shark in there. I was fishing a bridge one time and I watched a shark appear out of nowhere and eat this guy's entire chum bag. Just took the whole chum bag, pulled it right off the line, and took off with it. So, wow, that was a waste of money. Let's see. One of the most important items used for bridge fishing is a bridge landing net. It's funny because Gary was just here a little while ago on Sunday morning. We were supposed to go fishing, so we obviously sat down, watched YouTube videos, and talked. But we were talking about bridge fishing, oddly enough, and he said, "How in the world do you get a big old fish up?" A bridge net. It's a pretty cool little device. What you have to picture is it's hard to explain on a talk without video. It opens up, and it's generally got three sides, triangular shaped. So when it comes all together, it looks like a closed triangle, like sitting on top of a building sort of thing. In the middle, there's an anchor line, a middle line, and then there are lines where it closes on. So when you pull hard on it, the whole thing closes up. Some are weighted. Some have floats on the edges. They're all different kinds of these things. But essentially, you get a fish on, you'll need a buddy. And at bridge fishing, it's pretty easy to find buddies. They're always willing to help. You drop the net down. The net sinks down a little bit underwater. You bring the fish over the bridge net, and then you pull up on the net. And it closes. The trick to this is there are many, many bridge nets that don't close. They just have a deep pocket. And when you drop that in the water, you get it under the fish. You pull the fish up. The fish might jump out. So it's much, much easier to use when it closes, and much more likely you'll get your catch. But check them out, see what's out there and what's available. I was in Bass Pro not too long ago up in Fort Myers, as a matter of fact, and I know they had them there. And many of the fishing shops down here in the Keys have them, and especially when you get down closer to where everybody likes to bridge fish. So there you go, a bridge net. You need a bridge net. Okay, some locations. This is going to be really fairly easy. Bahia Honda. That's the Bahia Honda State Park. Has not only, it's got bridges, that has beaches too, by the way, but it's a great place to fish over. It has kind of like rock bottom areas where you're able to do all kinds of really great fishing in that location. Long Key Bridge is, like it sounds, long. It's got a really great place to fish off of. The ones that have the bridges that kind of sit next to the location, 7 Mile Bridge, you can fish the old bridge. That one's really high in the air, so it's pretty tricky when you get a fish. The bridge net comes in handy unless it's a small fish where it's easy to bring it up. I think probably my favorite spots for bridge fishing are going to be the Channel 2 and Channel 5 bridges. They are down near, Crag Key comes to mind. So you can look up Crag Key, and I think you'll see them because they're both fairly close together. Those are really, really excellent bridges to work off of. They're like what I described earlier. They really have a bunch of pop-outs on the edge. They're good on both sides of the bridge. The old bridge, you can fish down underneath the new bridge, which is kind of cool. When the current's going right, that bridge is right. The new bridge is next to you with traffic on it. So you can drop a line with the right current and work its way out to the other bridge, which is kind of cool. But those two bridges are really great as far as the stuff around them. Parking is good. Trash disposal is good. It's patrolled. So although in the Keys we generally don't have a lot of problem with the break-in type stuff like that, but I mean everybody can see you from the bridge. You'd be pretty dumb to try that stunt there, but. Yeah, well, anyway, but all in all, it's a pretty good place to go. So keep in mind Channel 5 and Channel 2 bridge. If you're anywhere down near Crag Key or down toward the lower Keys, the lower middle Keys, that would be an excellent place to fish. That's it. That's it, folks. That's Bridge Fishing 101 in the Florida Keys. If you've got questions, you can email me at catchyoutoutdoors@gmail.com. I'm more than happy to answer them. And again, when the book comes out, the book is going to have an awful lot more detailed information in about fishing from bridges and things you might want to know and things that you're going to catch. Yeah, we talk about the different fish and stuff like that there. And by the way, the fish catching part of it, the species, it can be really, really wild. You'll get stuff that you had never seen before. I know I did. Thanks much for listening. If you enjoyed my podcast, please tell a friend, leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Facebook page is Catch Outdoors. The website is catchoutdoors.com, where you can find all the previous podcasts and a schedule of what's to come. Until next week, get outdoors and enjoy.